I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the former ladies world number one, Linda Duffy. Linda, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks Alex, how are you?
Doing good, and thanks very much for joining us. Now, as I say there, a former ladies world number one, a multiple major winner, but where did it all start for you in darts? How did you first discover darts?
I was a sort of teenager, about 15, 16, and I went into the pub with my brother and my dad, and they were playing darts, and I used to watch them, and they used to let me have a throw every so often, and it really started from there.
And what was it like in those early days playing darts? Were there any barriers that you faced trying to progress in the sport as a woman?
Yeah, loads of barriers. I mean, I sort of would go around the pub and practice with them, and it wasn't very long before people realised that I was, getting pretty good at it, and they wanted me to play in the local dart team. It was the Enfield and District Darts League, and they wouldn't let me play because I was a woman. They said that I could talk if I wanted to, but that was all, and then there was the Lee Valley Super League that they also had a team in. They wanted me to play, and they wouldn't let me play in that either. But they did change the rule eventually for in the Lee Valley Super League for one woman to be allowed to play in each team. And so that's when they started letting me play.
How hard was that then? Because you just discovered playing it for the first time, and you had those barriers where you weren't able to play. How hard was that to maybe keep going and persevere so you could carry on playing?
Well, it was difficult, but I was I don't know, from an early age I've had that sort of stubborn streak and that character where, if someone says I can't do something, I'd like to prove them wrong and actually do it. So it's seen me in good stead, really, throughout my life. But, it made me even more determined, And then when I started sort of beating some of the good men in the league and some people didn't like it. They wanted to change the rule back so I couldn't play. And then others said, no, actually, she's pretty good. We'll let her stay. And, so I got a bit more respect that way. But it was difficult because I wanted to play darts and I didn't see any reason why I shouldn't play in amongst them. There's no ladies teams or ladies leagues or anything then at all. So I just had to sort of play with the men or not play at all, really.
Well, during the 80s, you had a 5-year spell as the ladies' number one. You won some big titles, the British Open, World Cup, Europe Cup singles. What memories stand out for you from that run?
I think when I started playing darts, I had some, I set myself some goals, obviously. One was to be England captain, play for England, and then be England captain. As far as tournaments went, I wanted to be, world number one, obviously, and I wanted to win the British Open. And I sort of achieved all those. In fact, I won the British Open twice as well. When I started playing, there wasn't a World Cup singles or a Europe Cup singles for the ladies. It was just the men that played. So myself and Maureen Flowers sort of lobbied the BDO, Ollie Croft and Sam Hawkins and those sort of people, Dave Alderman, those people back in the day, and we lobbied them and we said, we just kept on and on and on at them, to say that, you've got to put ladies in, and eventually they did. So then got the opportunity, of course, to win a World Cup singles and to win Europe Cup and Pacific Masters and all that sort of thing. So, yeah, but it was always like, for the women, it was always it was always pushing at doors all the time, it was never an easy route.
You touched on England there, you captained the team during that time, and at a time when playing for England was probably a bigger deal than it is nowadays. How proud are you to represent your country during, I suppose, what was a golden era for international darts?
Oh yeah, massively proud. I mean, I was selected in the squad in September 1977 away to Wales. Travelled all the way down there and didn't actually get a game, so I was, really disappointed. But the next February 78, I was selected to go and play in Perth in Scotland, and I actually played. And actually, Dave Whitcomb and myself made our debuts on the same day. So it was good. It was very good. I was immensely proud. And it's, always playing for England was so important for me. I used to get, start getting stressed, weeks before the England games were coming up because I wanted to do so well in them.
And a little while later, you stepped away from playing darts to study sports science and sports psychology. Did you ever consider making a return to playing at any point, or were you focused solely on your studies?
No, I was focused just on my studies. I mean, I had a pretty short playing career. I suppose, in a way, I played for county for about 20 years. But sort of travelling, being a pro was only about 10 years, so it was quite short, really. I could have gone on longer. But, I got married, had 2 sons, and, I just couldn't, there was no way I was going to leave them and sort of travel the world and play darts. So, and I was quite happy with what I'd achieved. I had a great time, went to great places, met great people, things I wouldn't have done unless I'd have played darts. So I was more than happy to sort of, to shut the door on that part of my life and knuckle down on my studies, which I did.
And these days you're now a professor of sports psychology at Middlesex University, and you're researching into gender differences in throwing skills. Can you talk us through what your research has found so far?
Yeah, that was one of the things I focused on. That was my PhD, actually, and I used professional dart players, as subjects in my PhD. And I was always interested when I was playing. I was thinking, how come the women can't play, as consistently well as the men? And it was always something that was nagging at me, because obviously I was playing in the same era as Eric and, John Lowe, Jockey Wilson, Cliff Lazarenko, Dave Whitcomb, all these sort of brilliant names, Bob Anderson, Keith Deller. And they were, we were good women on the day, myself, Maureen Flowers, Sharon Kemp, a few others, but they were better than us. And it always intrigued me as to, how come they're better? Anyway, so when I did go and do my doctoral research, I thought, I'm going to look into this. So I did. And, women can play darts, as we've seen now, just recently with the PDC, events. Women can play darts, but it's just that there's not as many top women as there are top men. And one of the things I found from the research that was throwing skills are very robust findings, in as much as that there are gender differences in throwing ability right the way through from a very early age. So, as young as sort of 2 years old, when we could start to pick things up and throw them, right the way through our lives, men are just more accurate. It's just it's one of those things, and it's been studied over and over again, and studies have been replicated over and over again, and they always come back to this same finding, that gender differences in throwing are one of the most sort of consistent, robust findings that you can have.
Mm-hmm. And it's been long overdue for us to get you on the show, not just to talk about your playing career, but also now seems a good time as well with ladies darts. It's garnered a lot of attention over the last 3 or 4 months. You touched on it there. Fallon Sherrock's run at Ali Pali, Lisa Ashton winning the tour card more recently. What have you made of their successes?
Oh, I think it's fantastic. Fallon at the Worlds, she did, incredibly well. We know that, Lisa's been a good player now for a long, long time. She's sort of a personal favourite of mine. I think she's fantastic as well. Fallon, I thought was one for the future, but obviously she's just blossomed over this period, when she's had the opportunity with the PDC. I think it's really good. It's obviously highlighted and the ladies' game. It's let a lot of people realise that there are ladies out there playing and that they can throw darts a bit. It's not just a man's sport. My only reservation is that it's great for Fallon, she's getting a lot of publicity, she's earning, a few bob out of it, which is, good luck to her. I want to see this now, translate into something that's going to help the ladies' game per se, not just individual players. And I just hope it doesn't detract from, the PDC maybe, getting a ladies' tour.
Absolutely, and Fallon's success at the PDC World Championship drew so much publicity, as we saw, and she returned to the big stage last week and drew with Glenn Durrant in the Premier League as well. What do you see happening in the future for her in darts?
Well, I think she'll get, she's getting a lot of publicity out of this, rightly so. She's playing brilliantly. I'd like to see her try and sort of make a stand, probably similar to myself and Maureen back in the day when we wanted to get ladies included in certain events. I'd like to see her and Lisa and some of the other top ladies of the day say, right, come on, it's time for our own tour. Let's have, because, it's great that they can play. Lisa Ashton getting a tour card and winning games on the men's tour is like unbelievable and fantastic, and I'm really happy. I want to see an opportunity for ladies to earn decent money. At the moment, it's still not a career path for women. If there was a tour whereby they could, play for £2,000 or £3,000 for the winner every weekend, with decent money, going down to the last 8, last 16 or whatever, then that's a career path. That's an opportunity for people. At the moment, there's 2 great women playing in the PDC, Fallon and Lisa, but realistically, they haven't got the opportunity to earn the big bucks.
Yeah, some interesting points you make there, and just want to touch on Lisa there. Winning games, obviously, we've seen over the first couple of weekends on the Pro Tour. after winning her tour card at Q School. Do you think her winning a tour card might halt any plans the PDC have to put on a women's tour? Because we've seen that Lisa's proved that gender's no barrier when it comes to Q School and getting onto the main circuit.
No, well, I hope it doesn't. I hope it doesn't prove to be a barrier. I mean, Barry Hearn has always said, and he sticks by his guns, that, if you're good enough, you can throw. Doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Well, I don't agree with that. He's got his opinion. He runs the show. Good luck to him. But I just like to see an opportunity for more women. There's a lot of good female players out there. And, if we had a tour similar to the men's, I'm not saying 128, that's definitely wouldn't work. But we could have like a 16 or a 32 woman tour, where they get good money. They have players' championships the same as the men do. Maybe not Euros yet, but we could build on the players' championships. That's how the men started. I just don't want to see. I want more women out there playing against other good women and proving themselves in their own right. If Lisa and Fallon, earn a few £1,000, then they've done really well. But if there's prize money out there of £500,000 for the women for the men's world championship, realistically, a woman isn't going to win that. So I want opportunities with more money for more women.
Definitely. And away from the ladies' game, you also managed Josh Payne, one of the emerging young stars in the PDC. How did that partnership first start?
Well, I was at a development tour, actually, up in Wigan some 8 years ago or 9 years ago. And I was watching a few of the players play. I went up there with a friend who had a young lad up there playing. And I watched Josh, and he caught my eye, and I watched a few of his games, and I got talking to his dad. And anyway, cut a long story short, his dad eventually contacted me and said, would I like to sort of look after him and, sort of try and guide him a bit. And I said, yeah, I wouldn't mind, actually. I think he's got a lot of potential. And that's how it started, really. And Josh and I have been sort of a partnership ever since. And, long may it continue. He's a great lad. He's a great dart player. And he's getting better all the time.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been a great partnership so far. 2 Players' Championship titles to his name. A UK Open quarter-final last year as well. What have you made of Josh's progress so far?
Yeah, I think it's been good. It's sort of, learning. Darts is an easy game to play, but a very difficult game to play properly or to play well. And there's a lot of young players. You'll see there's lots of peaks and troughs in their careers because you're learning all the time. I mean, I'm sure people like Michael and Peter Wright and Gary Anderson will all tell you. They're sort of, Michael's still in his 30s, but Peter and Gary, etc., are sort of in their 40s. They're still learning. You're still learning this game. Darts teaches you something new all the time, and young players tend to want to sort of run before they can walk, and they get impatient with themselves. So that's one of the things I try and say to Josh, be patient. He gets annoyed when he can't get the consistency he wants, or, if he's a bit rusty or whatever. And I say to him, just be patient, take time. It's a long process. It's going to take years for you to get up there and to stay there. I mean, it's all very well getting up there and, playing well and being up there for a year or two and then sort of fading away, as we have seen with, Premier League players, that haven't even got a tour card now. Our aim is for Josh to build all the time, slowly, and then, to maintain his form when he gets there and to be a top player for a long, long time.
Definitely. And lastly, when I was doing my research earlier, one story that I wanted to touch on, a lovely story, your son Rory, I know a few years ago now, 2015, came through the Riley's qualifiers to play at the UK Open. What was that experience like, watching him play in a big event like that, and does he still play much now?
He doesn't play much now, no. And to be honest, it was, although he is a good player, he still plays really well. He went to the Riley's qualifier because I got a feeling he was taking someone else there, and then just decided to sort of enter, and then he ended up winning it. He beat some very good players on the way as well. And then, to watch him play at the UK Open, it's amazing, really. And he'd never even played on stage before. It's the first time he'd ever got up on the stage and played darts. He'd only played in the pub, and so he did amazingly well for someone with zero experience, really. And he actually beat Barry Lynn in the final of the Riley's qualifier. And I think Barry Lynn's gone on to do quite well in a couple of UK Opens. So Yeah, it was good to watch him, but he's got, he's been to university, he's got a career of his own. It's too much of a risk to sort of chuck all that away and try and be a dart player. But he's good. He's got the ability, and it was great to watch him.
Excellent. Well, Linda, it's an absolute pleasure to finally get you on the show. Thank you very much for your time. Really, really appreciate it, and wish you all the best with Josh for the rest of the year and everything else that you've got going on.
Okay, thanks very much, Alex. Thanks for asking me on, and good luck with you as well.